but I can't see the preview yet, so I'm just waiting for a moment. Ah, there we are. So I will close a few other things that I have open, make sure everything works. There we go. So, hi everyone, thank you so much for being with me here today. Well, it's 5 o'clock. I'm actually perfect timing. Sometimes I'm a little bit early because I'm worried that the technology doesn't work. I am going to work in this sketchbook today. This is my Strathmore Mixed Media sketchbook. It is new. I've only just bought it, so this is the wrapper that I just took off. So it is 64 pages, 190 GSM, which is quite a low number for me. I usually work on thicker paper. And it's a really nice sort of small size. So this is A5-ish, maybe a little bit thinner than that. And it's mixed media paper, so I am planning to use it for my painting, but also markers, color pencils and other materials in it. And I am just going to start on the first page today. So I've prepared a little sketch. I actually got carried away a little bit because you always want the first page to look nice. And so I've prepared a little sketch, and this is what I'm going to work in. So you can see it's completely empty for the rest, and this is actually the cover page, not the first proper page to paint in. The first proper page starts here, but I really like the idea of having like a welcome page to start with, so I decided to do that as well. I am going to work from, I've sort of made up this scene, but if you want to paint along, you can look at my Pinterest board, which I will share now in the chat. There we go. That's my Pinterest board. I'm using some references, especially for the background and for the landscape, for inspiration for that. For the background, and you can find those reference photos on Pinterest. So if you want to paint along, have a look at that Pinterest board, and you can just click on the one that says all pins that I have saved, and then there's some photos in there that you will recognize from this sketch. So I'm just making sure everything works and that my sound is on, which is very important. Wonderful. So I'm just turning a few things off. I can hear my computer making a little bit of noise. So I think if I turn some extra things off, it should be a little bit less hard on the computer. There we go. So I am going to paint in gouache today. So this is the sketchbook I'm going to use. I am going to use a flat brush. I also have some round brushes here that I might use at some point. I have some really small brushes for some details. So I have a selection of different brushes, but I'm going to start with this flat brush, which I really like. And I'm going to paint in gouache. Because my background is going to be very green and sort of nature based. I have some greens here. I have some more brands here as well, but this is the brand that I use most. It is Winsor Newton. It's called Designer's Gouache. It's a very common brand in the UK. You can buy it in lots of places, and I really like it. And these tubes last me for absolutely ages. So I have some schminke here as well that I might use. I have some more colors here that I might use later on, but I'm going to start with the background, and I have my messy palette to add the colors on. I'm just quickly making sure that I'm sharp. I think I am. Yeah, so this is the sketchbook that I'm using. I'll put the wrapper away for now, I don't need it. So if you're painting along, you might want to check out that Pinterest board that I just shared in the group for the reference photo that I am using, but feel free to create your own artwork or something that is a bit inspired by this one. I wanted to prepare my sketch beforehand, so I was ready to start painting immediately. So I do like to make a little sketch sometimes. I don't always do that. Sometimes I just paint straight away, especially with landscapes. But this being the first page of my book, I wanted to make sure that I had a sketch prepared. So I actually did a little self-portrait. This is me. There's a little bunny rabbit here. I'm going to use light colors in the background, and this is going to be a tree that is sort of leaning over the water. So it's going to be a little bit of an idyllic, slightly sort of romantic scene, and I'm planting a little seed here, a little seed of creativity. So So this is my sketch for today. So if you're here, I can see there's quite a few people watching now. Yeah, feel free to say hi, and if you have any questions at any point, just put them in the chat, and I am very happy to answer any questions that you may have. So I am planning to create a light background and then a more vibrant, more colorful foreground. So I'm going to use the lightest colors here and then slowly go a little bit more intense in colors, more in front. So I have my palette, but I first want to add some white to that because I will need it. I don't tend to clean my palette very often. As you can see, I'm just using the palette with some paint on it still from last time. I might take off this bit of lump of paint. There we go. I don't know if I will be able to finish the entire painting in an hour, but we'll see how far we get. So I'm using gouache. This is my palette, and I have some paper here to wipe my brush on as well, if I need it. So I'll keep that close here to the side. So I'm just going straight in there. Yeah, as I said, I'm using some references from Pinterest. Feel free to have a look there if you are painting along, and you can also paint along and do your own thing a little bit. I think creating together is so much fun, and it can really be helpful to to inspire each other and to learn from each other, and yeah, to create together. Adding in a little bit of yellow to my palette as well. I realized that I want this green to be a little bit more of a lighter yellowish tone. So, just making sure everything is in view, and then I'm going to get started with the painting. And if you don't know gouache, gouache is a type of watercolor paint, which I really love. And I think it works really well when you are a little bit more precise, and if you want to keep a bit more control over what you're doing. So, and this paper, because it's the first sort of inside of the book, is not really suitable for watercolors, but that is okay. I'm still painting on it, and I feel quite confident that will work, but it might sort of bleed through a little bit or buckle. I'll make sure I won't paint too wet for that reason. So I'm starting with the light colors in the background. No details at the moment, just adding that first layer. And when you paint in gouache, I would always recommend go thick over thin. So start fairly thin with your layers of paint. And then you can go a little bit thicker for the layers that you add over it. And it's also important to let the layers dry. If you go straight in over wet paint, then the colors are going to blur out together, mix up. If you let your paint dry a little bit, you can go over it and create really vibrant, colorful layers. So there's a bit of sunshine sort of shining through here. I don't think I'm going to go all the way to the edges. I've not taped it off. So maybe let's mix in a little bit of green with that. So right. As you can see, I don't have to be too precise. I'm just going to add a little base layer of color. So maybe all the way here. So this paint is fairly diluted with a little bit of water, a bit more transparent for that reason, but I don't want to go in too wet, so my paper is dry. I don't want to add any water on the paper. My paper is dry. And I just want to dilute the paint a little bit to keep it soft and light here for these first layers. So actually I can go over this plant. So it's been a little while since I painted like this, from like a scene that I have imagined. And I do think that doing a little bit of preparation sometimes can go a long way. So for me, deciding on a bit of a color scheme and looking at some reference photos and coming up with some ideas can really help. And then preparing a sketch if I want to make a page look sort of nice and like a composition that I enjoy. If I'm painting more loosely, I do lots of paintings or drawings that are very different from this. So this is my doodle sketchbook. Making sure that you can see that this is my doodle sketchbook. I only yesterday designed the front cover for that, and I'm really pleased with it. I think it looks really cute. My doodles and sketches sketchbook. And I think most of you have seen some of the pages here, but they are, so let me, as you can see, much messier. I just doodle away whatever comes in my mind. Sometimes I use a reference photo. These were from a course. Sometimes I use a reference photo. Sometimes I use just my imagination. I try out some new materials, and it's absolutely fine for these pages to be messy. But for this sketchbook, I'm trying to make like a pleasing spread. It's a slightly more expensive sketchbook. I really wanted to sort of make the most of it. So that is why I spent a bit more time on my sketch for a spread like this. There's a time and a place for everything, right? So I'm going to add in a little bit of brown here along the tree. So this is just my first plan to color block everything out, and then we'll go over it and add more details. So, and because I'm working fairly dry, well, I've added some water to my paint, but because I'm working fairly dry, I don't have to worry too much about these colors mixing up. See, there we go. Oh, this side doesn't like the water very much, so I need to keep that in mind. Work fairly dry, as a note to self. So I'm a little bit stubborn for painting on the outside of the book. I just liked the idea of it, but it does mean that the paper is not the most suitable for painting. So there we go. Adding maybe a little bit more green here. So see, there's going to be a plant there. And I have been painting with gouache for quite a long time, and I really love it. I think it's a fantastic medium. So I'll actually make a little time-lapse video as well. I think it's a fantastic medium. You can sort of dilute it and use it almost like a watercolor if you use it with more water. But more and more I start to appreciate the sort of layering qualities of gouache and how much fun it is to use it in the sort of way that it's intended. So if that makes sense, because I think one of the best things about gouache is that you can layer it really lovely on top of each other and that it is opaque. And yeah, I'm trying to embrace that quality instead of fighting it. So, there we go. I'll get to that person in a moment. just color blocking these things out. I think this area here is going to be a bit more green and brown as well, so I need to be a little bit careful here around her face. So you can be quite precise when you use gouache. Be careful around the edges there. So, and something else that works really well with gouache is going over it with color pencil. So once everything is dry and you're finished, you can go over it with color pencil, and in that way yeah, you can add some extra definition and some texture. My camera will come back again. Sometimes just turns off for a second. So. And well, I need to give this format, this way of doing my videos. I need to sort of think about how I'm going to use this platform a little bit more. I have not quite decided how I want to do things exactly. I have my community, of course, where I do art classes, and where there's much more like tutorial space, and where we are really learning together, and there's like step-by-step tutorials and stuff. And I might do that a little bit on YouTube, but I also want this to be a space maybe a bit more inspirational, and where people can see my own art and see what I'm working on, you know, personally, instead of only the teaching things. I need to find a bit of a balance between teaching and personal art on here. There is quite a few art classes that you can watch back. If you go through my channel, there's some full painting and drawing classes. But I've not quite decided on what the perfect balance for that is yet. So I'm trying to add some different color greens. And as I said, these are only the color blocking sort of initial colors. There is lots of opportunity to add in more things. So let's add in a little bit more green here in the background, and then I'm going to give this person, well, me, some color as well. So there we go. You can see I'm using my gouache fairly watery, a little bit diluted at the moment. And I will go over there in thicker layers once I have color blocked everything out. Maybe a little bit here, if if I can make this a bit round, then that could be a really nice edge of the painting. So, because I don't want to go all the way to the edges of my paper, I want to sort of frame it a little bit in the middle. So. Around the edge here, maybe a bit of green there. So, there we go. I have a little bit of color on the background. And I want to add some base colors to this person and to the animals as well. And then I'm slowly going to layer up and make things a bit more dark and create a bit more sort of texture in the picture. So this dungarees is inspired by a pair of dungarees that I have that I wear very often. So I'll just keep that color scheme. There's sort of orange and yellow with lots of flowers. And I think that orange is a nice contrast with the background with all that green. So. And a bit more here. And if you are new to drawing people and you find that really scary, all it takes is just practice. There's lots of different platforms where you can look at sort of the model photos and people's body shapes and stuff. And it is, I know it can be a bit intimidating, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. And practice really, really does help. So. And looking at a reference can help as well when you draw a person. You don't always have to do everything from memory. I know that some people say that you shouldn't really use reference photos and that you should do everything from your memory or imagination or life. But I think there's definitely a time and a place for using reference photos, and I think they are a really great way of practicing your skills as well. I don't know what I would do if I couldn't use any references. So I'm giving her light skin color because she is me. I don't think I'll give her green hair though. I've got like greenish blue hair at the moment, you can't really tell. Now I'm wearing my hair up. But I don't think that will look good in the background, and also I don't know how long I will have that for, so I don't think it's really relevant to make this person look like me. So there we go. It has been a really strange week for me. I've been very busy. Yesterday I was in Cambridge, which is a lovely city. If you've never been, I'd really recommend going there, especially if you live in England. It's quite easy. Then if you're abroad, then it might be a bit harder. So yesterday I was away, and then the day before was Easter, so I had the day off, and today I've had lots of meetings. I do a bit of volunteering as well, so I went there in the afternoon. Yeah, just a busy day. So, drawing in little feet. I try not to avoid feet and hands. Actually, I gave her quite big feet and quite big hands as well. So going all the way in that crease here. So I feel like slowly the picture is starting to come together a little bit, doesn't it? add some brown for the hair. I think I have some dark brown here on this palette still that I could possibly use. Sometimes I work with multiple palettes. Don't know if this reactivates very well, otherwise I'll get some new paint. Yeah, get some new paint. There we go. So a little bit of burnt sienna, and I love burnt sienna. I think it's a fantastic, like such a nice warm brown. I know every brand has a slightly different color of brown, like burnt sienna, but yeah, I just love it. It's one of my favorite colors. I could mix it up myself from orange and green, but I'm just going to use it from the tube. So, there we go. So I need to concentrate a little bit for these smaller sections. And I know that I can cover this with a bit of color pencil as well. I can make them more precise in a moment, so that's also okay. Quickly making sure that my camera is sharp, so I think it is. And let's add a little bit of color to the shirt, and then maybe light blue. And then I'm ready for a second layer already. So that color for the shirt, I just made that up. I didn't want to go for yellow because there's a lot of green and yellow here already. I didn't want to leave it white, so I'm just adding in a little bit of blue there. There we go, and I'm still going to try and keep this painting quite loose. I don't want it to be too, too sort of, not too precise, because I want it to be precise, but I want to give it still a little bit of a loose feeling, not too controlled. And I know that that might not really mean anything to anyone else, but sometimes I feel we can get so focused on getting everything perfect that we lose the flow of the picture a little bit. So I'm trying to keep that. So there we go. So all of this already is quite dry. I just dropped in a little bit of water here. I might just quickly soak that up. So. There we go. So I'm just slowly going to start adding in a bit of shadows and some extra details. I also want to create a little bit of a sense of depth, so more detail in the foreground and less so in the background. But I definitely want to start adding in a little bit of, yeah, this is just basic color blocking, so there's much more detail that I would like to add in. And I'm just carrying on with my gouache, mixing up a light green, so I'm mixing up some white here with some green, maybe adding in a bit of yellow. And I know that the way I'm doing this by just dipping in my paint is a little bit unconventional, a bit messy, but I don't really mind that. That's just the way that I like to paint. So I have a really nice bright green here that I can start using for a little bit of background. So if I imagine, so maybe here on the sides there could be like a little island coming in. So there we go, a bit of an horizon line. And then here on this rock, maybe this one could be a bit rounder. I'm also going to start adding in just a little bit of sort of mosses, maybe a bit of a darker green here. And the light is sort of coming from behind, so all these areas here in the foreground, they're going to be more in the shadow. So maybe a bit of a lighter color there. So and I quite often work with a little bit of a tapping motion. Not everything has to be sort of smooth. I quite like a bit of that texture from the brush strokes to see that through. A little bit of the movement of the water. So I'm sort of slowly visualizing what's happening here and layering up more paint. In the background, maybe there could be some more trees. See, they're only barely visible over that yellow. There we go. So for these like little mosses and stuff that are hanging off the tree, I'm going to just leave that as it is for now. But I am going to add a little bit more sort of here to the sort of branch of the tree. So I'm just going, it's almost like I'm going over the page. jump around a little bit, so then this area gets time to dry, and when I come back to it I can add more paint to it. So the letting it dry is very important. You really don't want to go in too wet, because you can always reactivate the colors underneath, and then here you get muddy colors or blurry lines, and sometimes you want things to be quite precise. I have a little clip here somewhere. I should do here. So it's a little bit rusty, but it will do the trick. So it just takes a little bit of patience. A bit of time here. So I'm also filming a time lapse of this process with my phone. And sometimes I love time lapses. I think it's so much fun. But sometimes it's easy to forget how long things take in reality, because everything we see is reels and time lapses and snippets of things. But doing a painting like this, you just need to just take your time for it. And some of the paint that I'm using at the moment is reactivated, and by that I mean the paint was dried and I'm reactivating it with some water, and then now using it again. So I might have used it yesterday or a few days ago, sometimes even longer. Every paint is a little bit different, so some paint reactivates much easier than others. The reactivated paint is always a little bit less intense than the paint that comes from the tube. So paint that I put freshly on is always brighter and more vibrant than the paint that is reactivated. So this thing here, this green thing, is going to be a rock. And I know I said this already in the beginning, but if you've missed it, in the chat you can find a link to the Pinterest board. I have based the background, I'm sort of inspired by a photo from Pinterest. I'm not covering, like not copying it exactly, but quite a bit for the colors in the background. And then I've added in some extra things here. So if you want to paint along and you want to know where I got my inspiration from, have a look at my Pinterest, and then you can just find that photo all the way at the top of sort of everything I've pinned. It will be one of the photos at the top, because I've only just saved it. So there we go. I feel like slowly and steadily this is coming together real nicely. I'm really happy with them. For these, I want them to be a bit darker. So there we go. So I'm trying to use that paint a little bit thicker. We're going to be a little bit more in the shadows. making sure you don't forget to take a deep breath. Sometimes we can be so concentrated on what we're doing that we forget to breathe. And it is very important. So I'm just adding in a little bit more shadow at the bottom of the tree, but I'll need a bit more paint for that. I only added in a tiny bit of this brown earlier. So, and a really nice thing about gouache is that you can work light over dark. So it's a little bit different from sort of traditional watercolor paint where you go from light to dark. With gouache you can go dark first and then light later. And that's a quality that is really great, especially if you want to touch anything up, or if you, there's just so much opportunity to use that as a really great way of painting. Gouache is quite opaque, so you can do that. So, I'm really curious who it is that's watching. If you're here, maybe send me a little message. It's always fun to know if people are joining in. Let me know if you have any questions, or if you're painting along or not. So, going over the edge here, so trying not to mix up the colors too much. So, is there any brown that I want here in the background? Maybe a little bit here on the rocks. Like a bit of shadow. I might add in some black at some point, but for now I'm trying to stay away from using black. Black is just such an intense color, and although I really love it and I draw a lot in black, I'm trying to not use it too early. Doesn't seem to be bleeding through, which is good considering that this is not the proper paper for this paint. Hi Pamela, really lovely to see you here. I'm really glad you're enjoying this. So, making that bunny a little bit darker. This is sort of how I am painting when I'm doing a children's book page. I have illustrated a couple of children's books now, 4 in total, and I have done some traditional and some digital. Digital is just so much easier than traditional, and mostly not because the medium is easier, but just because it's so much easier to make changes if any changes are needed. And that makes just a world of difference. So, but I have also done some traditional paintings for some books, and this is sort of the method I would use, apart from the fact that I'm doing it in a sketchbook. So, a bit more green, so I'm really jumping around over the paper to add in these extra layers. I want that tree to feel mossy. So, I was also looking at some trees in the rain that I really liked. but I wasn't quite sure if I was, yeah, if I wanted to paint rain. I felt like something a bit more spring, summer-like. Oh, hi Katie, thank you so much. I'm really happy to see you here, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what you're creating when you're painting along. I always love seeing people's creations. And I know that this is not as much of a traditional lesson as some of my other sessions are, where I provide like a sketch template and things like that, but I think that hopefully you'll still enjoy it. It's a bit more of an this is my process sort of lesson. So adding in these bits of moss hanging from the tree. So just quickly checking the time. It does go so fast, doesn't it? I originally planned to paint for an hour, but I will not be finished in an hour, so I think I might carry on a bit longer, but I might also finish this tomorrow and then just upload the rest as a video. I do feel like I want to share the rest of the process now, not stop here. But an hour painting is very little time for a spread like this. I'm actually scheduling some events and some classes in my community for some shorter painting sessions, because I think it is fantastic to paint something in like 20 minutes or 15-20 minutes and then have immediate result. But most of the time painting just takes a little bit longer than that. You can see that my paper is buckling a little bit, even though I'm painting fairly dry. You can see that it's buckling a little bit, and that is okay. I want to add in a little bit of yellow here and there. So onto the tree. I'm just looking at what I think the picture needs more than at a reference picture sometimes. So. And I think painting from reference is great, but I also think it is okay to make the picture your own and to change things. Or actually, I would really encourage that. I think it is great if you can make a picture, if you can be inspired by a photo and then make it your own. So, adding some lighter marks in there. I need to make sure that everything is dry. So maybe adding in some light marks here and there. So, and so this is my first page in this new sketchbook. I can't close it right now, but this is my first page. And that means that I have a finished sketchbook that I can share with you. Well, actually, I'm working on quite a few sketchbooks at the time, so I always have a sketchbook on the go, or multiple. So at the moment I have 4 sketchbooks that I'm painting in. I have one that is for outdoors on the go painting and drawing, which is small and easy to carry with me, and for quick sketches and paintings. And I have one that is for messy sketches and just to brainstorm. Then I have one that is for sketch noting, so I have one for that as well. Which one did I forget? Oh yeah, I have this one now for painting, and I bought a really nice watercolour sketchbook as well with really lovely paper that I'm a bit intimidated with. So I have not started that one yet, but I want to use that solely for watercolours. So I tend to work on a lot of sketchbooks at the same time, and that means that each of my sketchbooks takes quite a long time to complete, but I really like working on different sketchbooks and having different places to use my creativity and to use it in different ways as well. So this one is going to be a mixed media sketchbook. I'm hoping to make the whole sketchbook look nice, full of spreads like this. Because usually my sketchbooks get quite messy. I like the idea of working on a sketchbook that is a bit more stylized. Some people have such beautiful sketchbooks full of really completed art, and I never do that because I usually have lots of other places to that on loose paper, and then my sketchbooks are more messy. But I like the idea of having a nice, a good looking sketchbook. So that's the goal. We'll see if it happens. We'll see how I get on with that. So adding in some drapes of plants here. So I've mostly worked on the background so far. I'm ignoring her a little bit for a moment. And I think having different sketchbooks works really great because it means that you can have a sketchbook that is okay to be messy in, and then maybe have another sketchbook that is a little bit less messy. And I think having an ugly sketchbook or a messy sketchbook is so valuable. I'd really recommend having one of those. Just one that you don't have to share, you don't have to put it on social media. And this might surprise you, but I'm not a very big social media person. And there's a lot of my art that I never share with the world. And I know that might surprise people because I'm here on YouTube and I do share a lot of things as well, but there's definitely things that I just like to keep for myself. Especially the practice things. And I think that's okay. You don't always have to share anything. Sometimes we feel a bit like we owe the world all the things that we make, but we don't have to, and not everything has to be monetized either. As a professional artist, sometimes it feels a bit like everything you make has to make you money somehow. But it's good to have a place where you can just play and just have fun. See, I'm just adding lots of little dots and details now. Still using the same brush. A quick sip of tea. There we go. want to still make this piece a little bit more magical. Yeah, but slowly and steadily we'll get there. Not everything has to be done at once, right? So it's all part of the process. So I think I'm going to add some flowers to this dungaree. So I'm going to start with yellow. So I'm just using the side of this brush to add in some of these yellow flowers. So I might need a bit more yellow paint in a moment. I'm doing this quite thick. I have a dungaree very similar to this, which I very often use for gardening because it's really sturdy. The colors have faded a little bit and it's just perfect for working in the garden with. Let's add a little bit of dark color in the hair. See if I have any black here. I've got some reds. So mixing that up with a little bit of brown, just seeing if I can make some of the hair a little bit darker. And when you paint hair, try and think of the hair as an as if it's one area instead of individual strands. So that just makes life a little bit easier if you approach it in that way. It's okay if it looks a bit knotted, a bit wild. I'm not very good at looking after my hair, it always looks a bit knotted. So if this person is me, then that's fine. So I'll never be the person with the perfect shiny hair. So there we go, maybe a little bit more brown here. A little bit of shadow. There we go. So maybe some shadows here. So I'm just trying to concentrate a little bit and I'm a bit less chatty. See if I can zoom in a little bit for you. It's coming together quite nicely, isn't it? I do think the water looks a bit too green. Maybe I need a bit more blue in there. So. A little bit more blue. So. Making sure I have a good amount of pigments on that brush. So. Oh, that is a bit messy, that's okay. Just adding in a bit more white here. Just thinking maybe I can add a bit of a flow of water. Does that look like what I want it to look? So this happens if you start to experiment a little bit. There we go. Well, I'm going to let that dry. I can always add in a little bit more detail. I wanted to have a bit more of the feeling that there's water flowing there. So. Is a bit too dark. I need to swap to a smaller brush. I wanted to add a bit of a highlight to her hair, but let's swap to a smaller brush and then I can blend that out a little bit, and there we go. I need to add that in when it's dry. I want a bit more of this light brown on the bunny, and I think, let me quickly check what the time is. Carry on a little bit longer, but I do think I'm going to finish this a bit later. And I'll definitely add some more detail in my color pencils as well, because the color pencil is a really great medium to combine with gouache. It will allow for making everything extra special and a bit more magical. So I've mixed in a little bit of red with this brown to make it a bit darker. So I feel like I've missed a bit of a darker color so far. Yeah, that's better, isn't it? Sometimes you do something and then it suddenly clicks and you think, oh yes, that feels like what I was looking for, what I was missing. So here between the plants. So now we'll add in like some proper shadow colors as well at some point. But for now, this red color works really well. It's such a fun medium to play with. I love him. So this bird is now sitting in a nest. I'll change that a little bit in a moment. So let's add in some darker colors. So I'm making a really dark blue. I'm just adding that, so I've added in some black with the blue basically. And I'm just going to add that to some areas here that I feel need a bit of extra color. So here. Slowly and steadily things are coming together, and I love that. I think you take your time for a picture and then slowly you see it develop. I need a bigger brush. I had not planned on this, but I suddenly decided that I wanted to add in an extra tree that is a bit more on the foreground. See? And that works quite well, I think. You don't always have to plan everything out. Sometimes, especially when you already have a bit of a plan, it can be really fun to go in spontaneous and then add in some extra things. So I just need to decide now if I'm going to give it leaves or not. I don't know yet, I'll decide later. There we go. If you are painting along later, please make sure you tag me in your artwork. You can find me on Instagram or on, I don't think you can share anything here on YouTube, but on Instagram or, yeah, I think that's probably the easiest way to share things with me, or in my community. There's places, there's a board where you can share things as well if you don't have social media. Oh, and Facebook, of course, you can always share things with me on Facebook. I'm not super active on Facebook, but I'm planning to be a little bit more. So, there we go. Well, I am going to let this dry. So if you want to see it a little bit closer up, let me move my water out of the way, because I always really easily knock that over and that is such a bad idea. So I'm just zooming in for a moment just so you can see what that looks like a little bit closer up. I am not finished with the drawing yet. I'm going to let this dry and then start adding in some things in my colored pencils. I think I might add in a bit more gouache as well, but this needs to dry. Especially around the person, there's a lot of work that needs to be done there still. That's definitely not finished. But I think the background looks quite fun. Let me know if you like to see the final results and if you want to see the process of that as well, because the process is a little bit slower, and I think I could quite easily work on this for another hour or two before I decide it's completely finished. So let me know if you would like to see that. And I'm just looking to see if I missed any messages. Yeah, so thank you so much for being here, and I will see you soon with the finished painting. Bye bye.